Sujit, you had a question on product roadmaps. Can you be a bit more specific, please? Hmm, hmm,
Hi,
yeah.
am I audible?
Yeah.
Yes, so I just want to clarify something like while creating a roadmap,
Hmm,
we include the milestone, the why,
hmm,
and what part. Other than that, do we need to consider anything so that it will communicate in a good manner to all stakeholders?
hmm. Yeah. I think I'd again go back to what I framed in terms of the strategy, right? In the strategy, you need to say what is the path you're taking, right? And how do you measure progress? So when you talk about roadmaps, you should frame the roadmap in terms of talking about how it aligns with the strategic path you're taking, right? Second, how will it actually impact the metric or goals you're trying to do? I think that is super important. I think the other important thing, at least to me, is every product project will have a risk of uncertainty, right? And a risk of failure. So it's very important to call that out so that when you're looking at the roadmap, you're looking at the risks, you know what your portfolio is going to look like. Because ideally, you may want to have some projects which are high return but high risk, as well as some which are very safe bets. Because it's going to be always a mixture of two. Because if all your projects are high risk, and depending on company to company, they may not have the appetite to have a roadmap like that. Or if all your roadmaps are low risk but low return, that perhaps is also not the best roadmap to progress at a product. So it's important that when you present the roadmap, you're able to say why the all the projects tally up to your final strategy. Two, you're able to talk about the risk return ratio of the projects you have in your roadmap. Mm. So the last question I have is from Deepak Sharma. So Deepak, you want to ask a question?
Hi, Suvagata. I just asked one more question.
Mm,
Actually, before this, I have faced some practical problem in my organization.
mm,
Like, I have been the process owner for some time. So I
mm,
see process owning a process same as product management also, because there also you work on different levers to optimize the process and bring out some improved version with your stakeholders for the stakeholders.
mm,
So when I am working with the internal customer, I find it very challenging sometimes to bring all the stakeholders
mm,
agreeing to the product, or maybe agreeing to the
mm,
features that we have shipped to them, and uh, it's very difficult to sometimes have the buy-in of all the stakeholders.
mm,
Although and sometimes what is required is the support of the leadership in
mm,
that sense.
mm.
So, have you faced any such experience? And what is the way out? Like how to like coordination and stakeholder management is very important aspect of product management. But in such tricky situations, how to navigate? And second is yes, just your frank
Mm.
opinion. What is good to start with? It is it B2B products or B2C products?
Okay.
If you start
So
your
I'll start
career.
with I start with the second one. I'd say that neither. Uh, Either people get into product management because they're passionate about a particular area, say
Okay.
AI, or say solving supply chain, or they get into a company where they're given a product. So in both of these cases, you may not have the option. So I'd say that don't worry too much about it. It's just about starting and knowing what skills you want to pick up.
Okay.
In the first question is getting stakeholder alignment is always going to be difficult, right? uh, but what really is important is uh, g- agreeing on the misalignments. And let me tell you what I mean by agreeing on misalignments. Let's say that you want to launch a feature, launch something, right, where you want to increase the price of your service,
Mhm.
and your customer service team is against it, saying that if you increase the price of your service, we'll get a lot of customer complaints.
Mhm.
And that's a very typical trade-off, right? And they're not aligned. And I think at this point of time, the best way to gain alignment is one, see if people are aligned on the broad problem being solved or not. You're not raising the price just for the sake of raising a price, right? You're raising the price because you have some other problem to solve, whether it's the company profitability, right? Or whether, yeah, whether you're trying to use the price as a lever to test something, right? So I think the first thing is to agree on the problem being solved. And most of the times, if you start agreeing at that level, you'll see people may not have disagreements with the problem, but more disagreements with the solution. So that's the first thing to do is see whether disagreement align on the problem or not. I think second is you will always have people who are not aligned, right?
Exactly.
At that point
Exactly.
of time, you need to be very clear of what the misalignment is and why.
Mhm.
So let's take in this example, the you want to raise a price, customer support is not aligned, right?
Mhm.
So a really good objective is that if you and the customer support team agree on the places where you're aligned with and
Mhm.
places where you're not aligned with. For example, here, the non alignment could be that customer support thinks they'll get 50% more calls. You think that they'll be getting just 5% more calls
Okay.
because that's the exact misalignment. And
Mhm.
if you're able to objectively talk about that, right, that's a great way to escalate because
Mhm.
then and when it comes to leadership you can show the trade-offs and then the
Mhm.
decision becomes easier. If you escalate somewhere and these things typically end up in escalation, right? If you end up in
Mhm.
escalating saying that customer support is not happy with it, right, it'll turn out to be very nasty and it will not create collaboration.
Okay. Okay.
But you should agree on where your misalignments are very clearly, and uh, that should be a very objective decision.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Mm,
Thanks, Swagata. I think it was a very good example. Yeah.
mm. Uh, Last question I have is from Alok. Mm. Alok, are you there on the call? So Alok's question was collaboration and competition. I think uh, 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 in politics is going to be a reality of workplace, and it's always going to be there. So uh, uh, I'm not sure that uh, like as a PM team, I think it's as I said, it's important to raise up the points of misalignment in a very objective manner and then work with others to resolve it. That's the only way this will happen. The moment we talk about things in a very subjective manner of conflicts and scope being taken over by one person, it's just going to be a very bad discussion. I think, yeah,
Suvagata, sorry to interrupt. I think that is one last question we have from Jawahar that we can pick up and then we'll wrap up.
cool.
Is that fine?
Yeah. So I
Okay.
think Java's question is from a business analyst. How do I look at the product manager? Jawahar, you want to talk a bit more about it?
Yeah,
Mm,
so I've been as a business analyst for quite some time, like
mm,
around 12, 13 years.
mm,
And I definitely see analyst or analysis to be a good career path, but majorly from the tech side. So, one question is whether the product management is completely from the business side. So, how is the transformation from being a business analyst to a product manager? And how should I take the career path ahead? So what should be the progress in order to move to that path?
mm. Mm. Okay. So I think I'd say that to get into product management, there are a few paths, right? One is if you have a lot of complementary skills and experience, you can get in as a lateral and in a big company, in a small company, right? The second option is you start at the bottom of the chain, whether it's a big company or a small company. In a big company with a lot of experience, they might not be willing to give you the chance. Or in a small company, they may be more willing to take the risk of having somebody who does not have a lot of experience in it. Now, having said that, it's not a hard and fast rule, right? If you have very strong skills, even in big companies, you can move into a lateral role. But obviously, if you compare to your peers, right, who started in that company some time back, you will still start at a lower position or lower grade. And I think that's going to be the first thing you'll need to reconcile in your mind, that at whatever you're doing, it's a career switch. And this career switch will mean that you start at a lower level than you are today. I think once you do that, it's just about figuring out where's the right company, right area where you are passionate about. It could be based on an industry where your industry knowledge is valued, right? And that's where a startup or some other big company might be willing to give a chance on you. If you don't feel that there's an industry relevant experience you can bring to the table, maybe then your best bet is to network and find people who are willing to give the chance. The other option is to move to a product management role within your own company. And a lot of people do that because you know the company, you know the culture, you know people who are willing to take a bet on you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm,
Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
mm, 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 mm,
Awesome, Suvagata.
mm,
Thanks a lot. I think all the answers you have given has brought some value to all of us, and especially,
mm,
helped out people who are actually, stuck with some XYZ problem. And I think you answered them very well.
mm,
Really, thanks a lot for joining us today.
mm,
I'm like really honored to have you on the platform, and
mm.
like really, really thanks. Anything you would like to say?
No, I think thank you for having me. And I don't know whether what I said was useful or not, but if somebody found it useful, I'd love to get feedback on how it was useful and how did they actually implement it in their lives. Mm.
Right, right.
Thank
Thanks.